One was worshipped as a living god. The other was paraded as a living myth. One rode a white horse through Tokyo as crowds bowed their heads to the ground. The other stood on a balcony in Rome screaming into a microphone as millions raised their arms. Both led their nations into the worst war in human history. Only one of them ever paid for it. Tonight, Emperor Hirohito and Benito Mussolini. The two Axis leaders who hid behind very different masks. Two completely different styles of total power. One question: who was truly more dangerous? Welcome back to Evil versus Evil, Monsters of History. This is Episode 7. Born in Tokyo, Japan, in 1901, Hirohito was the grandson of the Meiji Emperor and the heir to a throne that traced its lineage back, according to Japanese tradition, more than 2,600 years, to the sun goddess Amaterasu herself. He was raised inside the imperial palace, isolated from ordinary Japanese life, surrounded by tutors who taught him not just history and military strategy, but how to be a god. In 1926, at the age of 25, he became the 124th Emperor of Japan. He took the reign name Showa, which meant enlightened peace. The years that followed would be among the most blood-soaked in human history. He was crowned just as Japan's military leadership was breaking free of any civilian control. The Japanese army invaded Manchuria in 1931, carved out a puppet state, and dared the rest of the world to do anything about it. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China, and in December of that year, Japanese troops entered the city of Nanking. What followed was one of the worst atrocities of the 20th century. Over 6 weeks, somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 Chinese civilians and prisoners of war were systematically murdered. Tens of thousands of women were raped. The streets ran with so much blood that European observers, including Nazi diplomats, sent horrified reports back home. Hirohito did not order the massacre. He also did nothing to stop it. He approved every promotion and every commendation given to the officers responsible. In secret laboratories in northern China, his imperial army operated Unit 731, a biological warfare program that conducted vivisection on living Chinese, Korean, and Russian prisoners, infected them with plague, anthrax, and cholera, and tested the results in the open air over civilian villages. Hirohito's own brother visited the facility. The emperor signed the orders that funded it. On the 7th of December 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Hirohito had personally reviewed and approved the war plan. For the next 4 years, Japan would burn its way across the Pacific, comfort women, forced into sexual slavery for Japanese troops, numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Allied prisoners of war died at rates 7 times higher than in German camps. When the bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, killing over 200,000 civilians, it was Hirohito himself who finally went on the radio and ordered Japan's surrender. It was the first time most Japanese people had ever heard his voice. He did not call it a defeat. He told them only that the war had developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. Even in surrender, he could not bring himself to use the word lose. He did not abdicate. He did not stand trial. American General Douglas MacArthur made a calculation that prosecuting the emperor would ignite a guerrilla war, and instead allowed Hirohito to renounce his divinity in a brief public statement, become a constitutional figurehead, and continue to reign for another 44 years. He shook hands with American presidents. He published research papers on marine biology. He toured Europe like any other constitutional monarch. He died peacefully in his palace in 1989. the longest reigning emperor in Japanese history. That was Hirohito, the god who never answered for his war. Born in Predappio, Italy, in 1883, Benito Amilcare Andrea Mussolini was the son of a blacksmith and a schoolteacher in a small village in the Romagna region of northern Italy. His father was a fierce socialist who named him after a Mexican revolutionary. His mother was a devout Catholic. The contradictions never fully resolved themselves inside him. He was a violent child. He was expelled from 2 schools for stabbing classmates with a penknife. He grew into a tall, charismatic, terrifying young man who could mesmerize a room with his speeches and beat unconscious anyone who disagreed with him. He started as a socialist, edited the leading socialist newspaper in Italy, and was hailed as the future of the Italian left. Then, in 1914, he reversed himself completely, came out in favor of Italian entry into World War I, was expelled from the Socialist Party, and went on to fight at the front himself, wounded by a mortar in 1917. After the war, with Italy economically broken and politically chaotic, Mussolini gathered disillusioned veterans into paramilitary squads called the Black Shirts. They beat union organizers. They burned down socialist newspapers. They forced political opponents to drink castor oil in public humiliations. They invented something new in European politics: fascism. In October 1922, Mussolini and tens of thousands of black shirts marched on Rome. The Italian king, terrified of civil war, simply handed him the government. He was 39 years old. Within 4 years, he had abolished elections, banned every opposition party, taken control of the press, and made himself dictator for life. He called himself Il Duce, the leader. For the next 2 decades, he turned Italy into a stage. He rode horses bare-chested for photographers. He had himself filmed conducting orchestras, harvesting wheat, fencing with cavalry sabers. He invented the political theater that every dictator since has copied. In 1935, he invaded Ethiopia, using mustard gas on Ethiopian villages and civilians. Hitler watched. Hitler took notes. Hitler called Mussolini his teacher. By 1939, the student had eclipsed the master, and Mussolini found himself the junior partner in an alliance he had not anticipated. He joined World War II in 1940, convinced Germany would win in months. Instead, Italy invaded Greece and lost. Italy invaded North Africa and lost. Italy ran out of fuel, food, and morale by 1943. When the Allies landed in Sicily, the Italian Fascist Grand Council voted Mussolini out of office. The king arrested him at the palace. He was rescued by German paratroopers and installed as the puppet ruler of a small fascist state in northern Italy, where he watched, increasingly drugged and ill, as the war ended around him. In April 1945, Italian partisans captured him as he tried to flee to Switzerland with his mistress Clara Petacci. They were shot on the side of a country road. Their bodies were trucked to Milan and hung upside down from the roof of a gas station, where Italian civilians beat and spat on the corpses for 3 days. That was Mussolini, the showman who invented fascism and died kicking on a meat hook. Now, let us put these 2 regimes side by side. Category 1. Military strength. Hirohito commanded the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy, one of the most disciplined and capable military forces of the 20th century. At its peak, Japan controlled an empire stretching from Manchuria to New Guinea. Mussolini commanded an Italian military that famously could not win battles against opponents half its size. Italian forces collapsed in Greece, in Libya, and in Russia. The edge here is Hirohito by a continent. Category 2. Propaganda mastery. Hirohito's propaganda was inherited and ancient. He did not need to invent his image. He was already a god. School children bowed to his portrait every morning. Soldiers died with his name on their lips. Mussolini, by contrast, had to invent every piece of his myth from scratch. He filmed everything. He posed for everything. He gave the world the template for the modern political performer. The edge in scale is Hirohito. The edge in influence on future leaders is Mussolini. Call this category Mussolini, narrowly. Category 3. Political control. Hirohito ruled in name, but real military decisions were often made by his generals. He had veto power, used it sparingly, and never publicly broke with his cabinet. Mussolini personally controlled every ministry in the Italian government. He held 7 cabinet positions simultaneously. The edge in personal grip is Mussolini. The edge in durable power is Hirohito, who outlasted his entire war. Category 4. International alliances. Hirohito's Japan signed the tripartite pact with Germany and Italy in 1940, locking the Axis powers together. Mussolini was the founder of the Rome-Berlin Axis itself, the man Hitler imitated. Both were essential to the Axis, but Mussolini's alliance was theatrical. Hirohito's was strategic. The edge is Hirohito. Category 5. Legacy of destruction. Mussolini's Italy lost roughly 500,000 lives in World War II and devastated Ethiopia, Libya, and the Balkans. Hirohito's Japan was responsible for somewhere between 3 million and 10 million civilian deaths across Asia, plus the destruction of dozens of cities in China and Southeast Asia. The edge, by an order of magnitude, is Hirohito. So the categories split 3-2 in favor of Hirohito. But categories do not capture everything. Here is the wild card. What if they had switched empires? Imagine Mussolini ruling Imperial Japan. The propaganda machine would have been louder, more theatrical, and far more visible. But he would have lost the loyalty of the Japanese officer corps within a year. They followed Hirohito because they believed he was divine. They would have laughed at a tall Italian shouting from a balcony. Now imagine Hirohito ruling fascist Italy. A quiet, distant, ceremonial figure standing behind a charismatic council. Italian politics would have moved on without him within months. Each man was perfectly suited to his own country and would have failed in the other. The verdict. By the categories, Hirohito wins. He led a larger empire, killed more people, oversaw worse atrocities, and survived his own war intact. He died in a palace at the age of 87, mourned as a national symbol. But here is the part that should disturb you. Mussolini was caught, killed, and hung in a public square. Italy was forced, after his death, to reckon with what fascism had cost. Hirohito was kept on his throne by the same American military that had just dropped 2 atomic bombs on his cities. Japan was never made to fully confront what its emperor had approved. Mussolini paid. Hirohito reigned. Mussolini was the showman. Hirohito was the god. The winner is Hirohito. The one who was actually held accountable was Mussolini. Next episode, Nero versus Caligula, Rome's 2 most infamous emperors. One reportedly played the lyre while his city burned. The other reportedly tried to make his horse a senator. Both became symbols of imperial madness. Only one of them set the standard.